Well, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute after the program today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, very, very fun and looking forward to connecting.
Yes. So let's begin our journey before we get into your work by asking you this. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing the world, did so much to all of us. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach life today?
That's a great question. And I love how you're using the word era because it
Yeah.
definitely there's a synchronicity with what I'm doing. Now it seems pretty far away, so it's not so much alive for me and my experience anymore. Um, I actually had a good experience, like during the whole being able to be home more with your loved ones, with my son, and kind of have that time actually where he was out of school and able to, start school at home, come down for lunch. There was just much more flexibility. So, honestly, I had a really good experience. So I think it actually fostered more of a connection with my son. So I'm very thankful for that.
So let's get into exactly what you do on a daily basis. And to do that, kids pull the truth out of us. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 11, 12-year-old kids. You're in a school, it's career day, and the kid in the back of the room is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer that child?
I love that. I do something that gives me energy. And I do a couple of things. And one of those is what you see Joe doing every day or every podcast that you listen to. So I'm also a podcast host of podcast called Career in Technicolor. So my mission and my purpose is really to kind of light that fire under you to keep going and keep building work. And really, it's more than work, it's a life on your own terms, something that truly sparks you and gives you energy and brings you alive. So I probably would not need to explain it to 11-year-old because
Sure.
they still are having fun. They
Yeah.
have not been, beaten down by this world.
Uh-huh.
So I do fun things. I play every day, and I found certain activities that give me that feeling. Another thing that I do is I teach Qigong and Tai Chi, which is a somatic movement practice. So I've discovered that sometimes, people will tell you that you need to do a linear thing. You need to do one thing, but it really depends on you. You are so unique. So don't always listen to somebody who's so convinced that they know the right way, but play. And for me, that's resulted in really finding a movement practice that I teach to others and that I will teach till the day that I die.
So, speaking of Spark, when you were that age, what was your dream job? What did you want to do when you grew up?
Hmm. That was a hard question for me. So it's interesting that I guide and mentor others to find their purpose. And that's really kind of that lights me up. But I had the hardest time finding it myself.
Yeah.
So, and that question did not really give me answers. I do remember that I liked to play outside. I liked, to climb a tree. I liked playing pirates with my cousins, or riding the bike. But there wasn't like a meaningful answer that I could find for work direction from what I liked to do as a child.
So, where were you born and raised?
I was actually born in Soviet Union,
Okay.
which is right now a small country called Latvia. It's
Yeah.
in northeastern Europe, below Finland. If you think of Scandinavia, Sweden, I always like visualize things.
Yeah.
So taking a ferry ride or a boat ride from Sweden, Stockholm to Latvia.
So, what brought you to America?
It was really my soul and my own essence. It
Yeah.
was one of those things that didn't make any sense, that there was no rhyme or reason, but there was this like a desire and a direction. Like when you have something planted in you, it's coming from just, it's not coming from you figuring something out, you putting a goal, you putting, a manifestation board. It was like a driving force that just like It was like I was just taking one step to another after another, and it was really freedom. I think it was I was born in a country that was oppressed. It was taken over by another country. So, and I was about 8 or 9 years old when the curtain fell, right? The Soviet Union started to dismantle. But, you know, with freedom, it doesn't happen overnight just because something like that. It's like the lack of freedom is in people's psyches, it's in the air, it's everywhere around you, even for probably even now, you know, it takes generations to heal from like 5 decades of being, you know, oppressed. And I'm a part of a small country where that has been oppressed by Germany, by all these other countries
Yeah.
throughout the centuries, you know. And it was really, it's a great question. It came to me when you asked me what drove me here. It really was a freedom.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what was it about growing up early on in your life that gave you this desire to help people keep that fire going, to help people find their compass needle and what they need to do with their lives? What ultimately, between that and podcasting, how did you evolve to this point? What do you think the seeds that were planted early on that were harvested into who you are today? How did that begin?
Yeah. There were a lot of seeds, Joe. You're so right. And, you know, it wasn't a desire necessarily to help people find their purpose from early on. It's been a puzzle, you know, it's been a process of my own reconnection to my own essence. Because a lot of the seeds actually there came from feeling lost and not knowing and seeking, and a deeply also spiritual process of activating and reconnecting to my own essence.
So, who's been your hero? Who's been that inspirational force in your life that's allowed you to evolve into who you are today?
Many, so it hasn't been one person. There have been several very instrumental people. And I think that's why I also love having the conversations and interviews on the podcast, because it is very much so that somebody can serve as a possibility when we see somebody doing something. And then only then we can really conceptualize or many times imagine that that's something that is available for us when it comes to podcasting, right? Because there are many and they're ongoing still mentors. And mainly it's been on the spiritual realm. It's really this integration practice of like becoming a more fully activated human being. Uh, but for podcast, I saw a lady named Kathy Heller, and she has her own podcast. And I think that's funny. It kind of ties into your question about the pandemic. So I actually followed her right after the pandemic. So that was definitely one of the outcomes where my podcast came through, and she was an inspiration to me. And I saw somebody doing something and having fun and encouraging that it can be a possibility. And I was like, well, let's go. Let's try it out.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so it answers kind of some of these questions that you asked before. And I also have a 15-year career in recruiting, or also known as talent acquisition. So I knew also through this kind of like 2 decades of searching that I'm an introvert. So I like more one-on-one connection. So the podcasting definitely, after doing like thousands of interviews over the decade and more in recruiting, I knew that I like that part of seeing somebody, like actually delving deeper into their story
Yeah.
and interviewing.
Yeah. Well, and podcasting is a really wonderful realm. What do you like the best about being in this podcasting world?
It gives me energy. It's literally an activity where it's not just an outflow.
Yeah.
It like literally sparks me.
Yeah. So, what was the first podcast you listened to? Did you have one in the beginning that kind of hooked you that you emulated or loved?
Probably like Lewis Howes or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, speaking of interviews, if you could have one dream interview, one dream guest, or a few of them on your show, who would you love to interview?
I'd love to interview Kathy Heller. That's the lady that I mentioned
Yeah.
who had a successful podcast. Um, and honestly, my whole thing is I'm not so much into celebrities.
Yeah.
Who I love finding and connecting with are regular people, like how they have built their lives, and especially if they're fulfilled and you can feel that resonance. I have to feel that resonance. Like I recently interviewed Jason Moss, and like you won't know, many people will not know who he is, but I like to interview heart-centered, like people who have a strong signal and you can feel like the realness and the authenticity and the strength kind of at what they calibrate, like it speaks to your soul.
Yeah. So what is it that motivates you every day to get up when that alarm clock goes off? What gives you the energy to not only do this work and to help people and to interview people, but to also take care of your own soul? What's that collective energy for you every day?
So one of them is the interviews. These interviews fulfill me. They give me energy. And this is why I invite everybody. Like, what I find, and I was kind of in that mindset too for a little while or for a hot minute where you feel like you have to be of all this service to the world, especially people who are empathetic and heart-led, and they feel like they have to give and, it's all about others almost. But I realized that it's actually not my truth, that my truth is, and I think anybody that come across that I mentor, I encourage actually people to be more selfish. That thing, the first you have to be of service to you. You have to find these activities that energize and fill you up because that's when you can do the things. That's when the alarm clock, maybe you don't have an alarm clock, or even if you do, you kind of like it adds to fueling your fire,
Yeah.
right? To fueling that spark.
So when you think about the word retirement, we all get mired in our careers with what we're doing. But when you think about that big, huge word retirement, what comes to mind for you?
So I want to find the things that I will want to keep doing, that
Yeah.
there's not going to be that hard stop
Hmm.
because I will enjoy it and hopefully somebody still will be interested. This is why I started teaching also Tai Chi and Qigong somatic movements. I also teach at senior living homes because it's like whole body mobility. And, many times people unfortunately only appreciate it at the older age, how movement is medicine and how it can, just make you feel better too. So it's not just a work, right? It's kind of all these areas of our lives, right? That go into the whole a beautiful life. But I think about retire. I definitely, it's something I can carry into my retirement. I'll be working out with other old people,
Yeah.
and then I can do the same with interviews and stories. Right? People have the most fascinating stories, and I think I just remembered your previous question about the famous or who's you want to interview. It's really everyday people, right? It's really this connection conversation like you and I are having.
Yeah. Those are the most fascinating ones. So let me ask you this. If you were to get into a room of everybody that's listened to your show or that's known you as a recruiter, anybody that's known you in a professional sense throughout your career, and you could go to the front of that room and tell them a fun story about your life, maybe the first concert you went to, maybe coming to America the first time, maybe a magical place that you visited in your life, just some kind of fun story that might shed a different light on who you are as a human being. What would be a fun story you would tell that room?
No, that's a lot of pressure because honestly, that is the hardest question for me, Joe, because
Yeah,
um, I was this kid that early on learned to perform and achieve.
yeah, yeah.
So
I get it.
this
Yeah.
fun has been one of the hardest journeys.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what was it like when you came to America in the beginning? Was it like a jet lag that took a while to get over, or was it like an instantaneous comfort that you finally got to what you were wanting, which was freedom?
No, and you're 19 or 20 years old, you don't have jet lag. You're
Right.
young.
Right.
You can go
Sure.
without sleep, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's only after 40 when you start to be like,
Yeah.
like where you have to recover after a flight to Europe. But it was just a sense of expansiveness. So the funny story, I guess maybe that's a funny story. I came to work at a Food Lion. I was working at a deli. I had no idea even like this small town in North Carolina where I was going. It was a beach town. There was this summer student exchange program. I had started university back at home and came here just for a summer exchange program and worked in Delhi, and then we also cleaned homes, beach homes on the weekends, and then we went to this. We were bar or club, on Saturdays, and it was just this feeling. It was a felt experience of like coming from a small country. So Latvia is about 2 million people or less, so small. Um, Kind of all that history, heavy history, and I just felt the contrast between kind of constriction and limited opportunities to voila, here,
Yeah.
like expansiveness, huge country, huge roads, huge cars,
Yeah.
like it was like a complete like 180.
My relatives came to Ellis Island from Italy. My great grandparents did. So I understand the immigration and that thing. Does it seem strange to you now in this modern 2026 world of America that we live in that immigration is becoming this kind of thing that is being targeted? Because that's the whole idea of America. No one in this country is 100% American. We all have ancestors that came from other places. And you came from the Soviet Union. You've seen that level of oppression, so to speak, that happened. Is it strange for you to see that happening in this country now?
Well, I think it's a very generalized question, and I probably don't have one right answer, right?
Right.
It does depend on the situation and context. Do I believe that there has to be the due process? I came here
Sure.
legally, and went through all of the things. So I think it is very important to uphold and maintain certain set of values and cultures and to qualify for that if you want to maintain it.
Yeah,
So, but on a, so I think it's a huge, big question and it is nuanced.
it is. It certainly is. So let me ask you this. Everything that you've done in your life, everything that you've achieved and evolved to, what are you the proudest of? What rises to the top?
I think it's really the work and the level of activation that I've been able to find in myself, like the walking with courage despite all like not having the pedigree, not having the financial means, and just like being so resourceful and figuring it out and ending up, working, achieving certain level of success. And then also like starting to like not giving up always, no matter what obstacles, kind of what situations presented themselves, kind of keeping going and yeah, becoming a stronger and more capable human being.
So I'm going to take this one step further. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, all of your listeners, everyone that knows you professionally, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm an expression of my essence. I'm not just this body, I'm not just what I do. I'm actually yeah, I'm an essence that's being, that's animating my body. So I'm not just a podcast host, right? I'm not just a mom. I'm not just a friend, or a sister, or kind of, or any of the roles, right? Or segments, how we are defining ourselves. But like, I'm an essence that's being expressed in this, 3D reality.
So let me ask you this. If you were to get into a time machine and you could make a choice of going into the future to see what happens, say 10, 20 years from now, or you could go in the past and see one event in human history with your own eyes, where would you go?
Now, I honestly, I don't really, I try not to plug in and give too much energy in the future because
Yeah,
the possibilities, the only future that I have control of is creating my own.
yeah.
And in part, my podcast is dedicated to empowering you, like reminding you so you remember that you are creating your own future. So I guess that would be the only curiosity that I would have, is to see my own life, right? Sometimes it can calm us down to see that 20 years from now,
Yeah.
it worked out. It
Yeah.
all comes together because, this journey of entrepreneurship, of podcasting and everything, it's not like the same as when you go and hand over, your time in exchange of a salary. There's a lot of like, there's just so much more of uncertainty,
Uh-huh.
right? When you're building something on your own, and when you're going for a life that you truly want, right? Not just following models and circuitry that you've learned or that this world has given you as a template for success or how things work. So when you are deciding to embark on a path of your own making, which I'm largely doing, it's probably would be more calming to see like that it all works out
Yep.
20 years from now.
Yes, and I totally get it, especially with that entrepreneur mindset. So if anybody wants to tune in to Career in Technicolor or get into the area of you, any of the good business, any of the good work you're doing, where do people go?
Go to Apple Podcast app if you have an iPhone, or Spotify, and find Career and Technicolor Podcast. I'm also on Instagram under the same name, Career in Technicolor. I would love to hear from you. I would love to connect, and I would love to keep that fire burning. If you've ever had that feeling on your heart that kind of, on the outside everything seems good, right? People validate you're doing a good job, you have a good position, right? You have a house, whatever, kids, everything seems to be like on the outside, check. But if on the inside you feel that pull, that kind of that ache sometimes, even that there's must be something more, that something is missing, then come play with me. I love to share stories and also tools of how you can actually design your own dream job, your own dream life.
I love it. I will put all these links in the show notes. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. Have a wonderful new year and best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.